Good morning, and back from a day of, I would like to have said rest yesterday. It wasn't. I suffered a bad headache for much of the weekend, despite the fact that I enjoy so much watching the Six Nations rugby, and I stuck it out despite the headache. It still hadn't gone away yesterday, and I decided that in these very strange times, discretion was the better part of valor, and that I would actually uh, contact the doctor, which I did. And I have to say, I got superb service. I got the boss man himself, Dr. Jason Heath, who's been on this program, and he very thoroughly, he quickly sent me some blood tests, and it's the fastest I've ever known blood tests go through. He cleared me of most things. However, I'm going to have to watch the champagne and the oysters because my diet is all over the place. It's not that I've got a rich diet. I don't eat that much. And for that matter, nowadays, I don't drink that much because I'm not a solitary drinker. But it would appear that I'm bumping along the rim of diabetes. So I've got to be a wee bit careful. Haven't you, Keith? Yeah, you have, old boy. But other than that, fighting fit as a fiddle. And I'm glad of that because I think that once lockdown ends, that we're going to have a bit of a feisty time. However, headline, when is lockdown going to end? Because yesterday, Boris was saying, I think it will all be able to be lifted for the last time come Easter. In fact, earlier than Easter, he suggested in March. And today, he can't rule out the fact that we might have to go into lockdown again and again and again. So, what is the truth of the matter? I don't know. But quite often, a perceptive uh, colleague, Paul Fowle, is with me this morning. I know he is. I can see him lurking in the green room and ready to launch himself on board. But one or two things we've got to do before then, and we'll have a little chat to Paul about that because he is very perceptive and can generally read between the lines of what's going to happen. So that coming up, what a delight! All right, let's have some. Now, the weather is going to be rather better than it has been lately. It will be up to 9 degrees, and it's going to stay 9 degrees all throughout today. We're going to have some drizzle. What's it doing outside at the moment? It wasn't raining when I came to work an hour or so ago. It doesn't look as if it is now, but it's going to. So I warn you, don't go out without a Macintosh or an umbrella or whatever else you use to keep the rain off. I use a newspaper. Dreadful, 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 dreadful man. There's nothing elegant about me once I get cracking through the rain or outside. And I also, there's I suppose the wind is 13 from the southwest, and I look at my faithful tree. It is rocking a little bit, so it's going to be a little bit breezy. So watch it when you're out there. But generally speaking, much, much warmer. And in fact, I noticed that in the house last night, and I actually slept in the buff. Ooh, naughty, naughty. And we can expect decent weather for the rest of the week. In fact, some weather experts are predicting that by the weekend, in some parts of the UK, it may get up to 17 degrees. And that is pretty balmy. That is spring weather. And I suppose we are heading slowly towards March. I think it's March the 20th or the 21st that is officially the first day of spring. I remember it because it was my sister's birthday, my late sister's birthday. And let's hope that by the time we get to there, we will be out of lockdown, tearing around, doing bucolic dances in the street, rushing into the pubs, which will be open. The sun will be great. The daffodils and the snowdrops will be peeking through. I think they already are, actually, but but that it is and the lambs, of course, we have at Easter we have the lambs frolicking. So let's say hope that every dream that we've ever had about what Easter is supposed to be comes true. All right, let's just catch up a little bit about us. Now, locally, it's not news. It came out a couple of days ago. But I think it's worth reminding that the council tax is going to go up by 3.49% for a Band D house. That's about 52 quid a year, or a pound a week. And the police are going to get 15 quid of that, 7.5%. You're playing for the coppers, and let's bring in our copper now, Paul Fowl, because a man of many parts, an ex-policeman, and also an ex-banker, an ex two or three things. Some people are very lucky to be able to be an expert in all sorts of things in their lives, and Paul is one of them. So, good morning, Paul. If we can find you, yes, there you are. Good morning.
Hello, Keith. I've got to go along with your solitary drinking, Keith. I've got a quote here. I thought I'd have two quotes which the public will like. By the way, good morning, viewers. People are terrible at sitting alone, and the classic one by Pascal, the great French philosopher. All of humanity's problems stem from a man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone. And this is why they recognised mental health in the 18th century. So generally, the French and British just drank. So the point is the solitary side, Keith. We could be solitary if we've got plenty around us to do. But if you said to me, sit a day in a room, it would be torture. And that's why human beings are so strong in one kind, but very weak in another. So
well, now something we haven't tried yet, Paul, is you sitting in your house and me sitting in mine with a table laid out with some wine and some beer and some good foods, and that we actually join one another for lunch.
Absolutely, a Zoom lunch.
Absolutely.
That's interesting, yeah. If it's difficult,
we'll even record it to see how it goes.
How can I give you the wine through the screen, Keith?
Well, I'll tell you what. You take a sip of yours, and I'll take a sip of mine.
Okay.
All right, let's get down to some serious stuff. I know that you've got a lot to talk about this morning, but before we do, what I would like to ask you, and I said to the viewers that you're very perceptive about these things. Yesterday, we were going to be out of, the headlines, let's gamble, let's get out the maypole, let's dance, and so on and so forth. We're all going to be let out of lockdown. This morning, we got warnings again, hang on, don't get ahead of yourselves. But it's the Prime Minister who said it. Don't get ahead of yourselves because it ain't going to happen. Now, what's your view of what's going on?
There's so many ways to look at this, Keith. I think that everyone has a right to celebrate. I think this has probably been the most boring time in many ways since, I don't know, Second World War even, where we're actually, to me, it's been like an open prison for a year and a half. So I would say the public have every right to go out and celebrate. But if it carries on too long, yeah, I agree, that's dangerous, Keith. I think there will be an initial frenzy, but people will think, hold it, I'm back at work now, I'm back in my normal social life, let's get back to it. The problem you've got, Keith, is that unemployment has, of course, gone up. So you'll have a few dejected people as part of our population. But yeah, I see no reason. If after the war, D-Day went on it wasn't just the celebrations for Victory in Europe Day. They celebrated, as my father said, they celebrated quite rightly for many, many a week. And I think we've been fighting a war against coronavirus. We're nearly there. So I don't see once the government say it's okay now, I don't see why we can't celebrate in the streets. It's a human reaction, a natural one.
Do you think it's going to happen, though? I mean, yesterday it was going to. Today, we've got various people saying, including Boris, contradicting himself from yesterday. This is the latest news in the Express that I've got up in front of me. I looked through the papers in the morning, and one of the things that I find very annoying, and I don't know why the papers don't understand, if we're going to read papers online, and particularly if they want us to pay for an issue after reading one, every time that you turn on, there are all sorts of ads that skip by under your nose. And that makes it very irritating if you want to see what the news is very quickly. So I wouldn't subscribe to any of them. Frankly, I think they're an awful lot. But anyway, I happen to have the Express this morning, mainly because there's a picture of Keir Starmer on the front. And I thought, oh, well, that's a change. But Boris is quite plainly saying, I think, quoted,
latest.
Time to let us out of our prisons, he's still saying. But by the same token, he won't guarantee that we're able to get out of lockdown. And it's perhaps this will we or won't we is helping stir some of this discontent, Paul. Or am I just an old curmudgeon?
Well, most of us would agree with that, Keith.
I thought you might. Gave you an opening there.
God, it's a difficult one because I feel like celebrating with a glass of wine or whatever. Well, the government can't stop it for a start. I think that I don't see why you can't have I think the public, once they're out and realise they're back in normality, we will readjust. This lockdown, this is what I was going to say to you, Keith. I've got a suggestion here. Some of the lockdown timing has been poor, and that's not the government's fault. They had to choose certain dates. I don't see why, with the good weather coming, with clearly the vaccine, you've had it, I've had it, most people I know have had it in our age group. I don't see why lockdown can't almost be done in small chunks. In other words, if there's not been many spikes recently, I don't think. Okay, there could be fear of a major one, but if it's going well, why can't lockdown be more controlled? I.e., 4 weeks. Let's see how 4 weeks goes because it's getting better, as it was intentional in the early days. Instead of this lockdown, it's felt like being in a prison. So there's the prison type lockdown the government done, and the short one where we're all lulled into a sense of full security, and suddenly realise, oh God, so we can only go out for about 4 or 5 days. So it's not easy, but I do think the government's overdoing the lockdown to some extent, or rather the timing of the lockdowns hasn't been great. We should have had I think probably a bit of a longer Christmas really in some ways. And but that's my feelings, Keith. We're into new territory, but I do believe that most of the public will be sensible. Plus, of course, some people have gained.
There we go. Little sneeze on the left. Roman said that was good luck. Can I just say to you, because a good friend, a mutual friend who appears on this television station, came by yesterday, and you know what he was doing? Helping me take down my Christmas tree.
Really? You have been celebrating.
The Christmas tree has been up since about the middle of December till yesterday. And a great deal of pleasure it gave me. Actually, I understand there was a movement around the country to keep your Christmas tree up until the end of January, because it made us feel good. Christmas trees are lovely things, and Christmas decoration. But the word didn't spread, or a lot of people didn't want to do it, and there wasn't much jollity left. And I think it is a pity. It would have brightened a very, very difficult and dull January. But you would well. I wonder if I could just make one more point too, because you're talking about the vaccine, and you're going to talk about the vaccine. You've got some specific thoughts on it. But one of the things that we've heard many times is that ordinary stuff that should be looked after by the doctor isn't being. Now, I have to say to you that yesterday morning, when I was getting a little bit concerned, I'm the only one who would get concerned about me, but I phoned the surgery. First of all, it was old home week. With all this giant thing that's being built, you talk to voices that you don't recognize. But God bless her, on the phone was Angela, whom I've known for a long, 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 long time. And I said, Angela, I need to talk. I've had this headache, and I'm just getting a bit concerned, and I'm vulnerable and all the rest of it. And she said, right, I'll get on. And she got the boss. She got Dr. Jason Heath, who called me back literally within about 20 minutes, I think. He had me up to the surgery. They pumped me out of blood. Must have sent it to a lab very quickly, or looked at it on the premises or whatever. And by 6 o'clock last night, they'd got an answer about what was wrong with me. And actually, I didn't know you could tell this from blood, but their conclusion was that I'm a curmudgeon.
and the blue blood.
But the speed with which they handled a non-urgent case, we didn't know it was urgent or not, but they handled the situation really was first class, and I think they should be patted on the back for that surgery particularly. And actually, cheekily, I did have a little poke at Jason, and I said, this big stuff, I much prefer that your lovely little surgery there. And he said, well, yeah, that's all right, but we have to keep on putting on specialists. He said, and virtually they're like a hospital, in the corridors trying to do their work. So things have got to happen, and I suppose they have. But it's a pity to see those little surgeries go. Right, over to you, because you really do want to talk about vaccine.
Well, I'll just finish your point off, Keith, about services. I think in the early days, especially, too much was put on coronavirus. For example, I had a cancer operation delayed by 5 months. Other people I know, and that's not the NHS's fault, but they had so much to deal with. But was there an over concentration on coronavirus? In years to come, it might well be that people write and say we overdid it because other things suffered. You can produce statistics for a little old lady who's 80, whose operation was postponed for 6 months. She didn't make it in those 6 months. So look, the NHS are brilliant, but let's not. I'm not blaming the NHS here, but the way it was very much heavy-handed one way. They've got the balance right now. Now is probably their big test with the vaccine, but they've been brilliant, Keith. I mean, as you know, I would have died on the operating theatre if without the NHS. So I've got every admiration. But whether it was the administrators in their cosy offices or the surgeons or the people running the hospitals who did it, there was a lot of resources put into one thing and one thing only. I think that's accepted. Certainly, I've got a cousin in the medical profession who said, yeah, obviously coronavirus, it's rather like a major accident, say, in a city where you send 50 fire engines to a fire, and then there's this bigger fire at the other side of the town, but you've got to deal with that one first, okay? So that's the analogy I use. I do think it was all coronavirus, and as I say, I come back, this might sound controversial, in 5 to 10 years' time, we'll look back and find out this wasn't actually it's a pandemic, but it's not the major one. It's well down on the illness charts, really, Keith. And obviously, I've had it, you've had it. It's a terrible thing, but I do think we overegg things sometimes in this society. You look at the Spanish flu, you look at the war, you look at statistics are lost in those days. They didn't keep so many good statistics, but we produce these statistics. As I say, it's quite clear that sometimes their certificates were in coronavirus was the cause of the person dying, and indeed it wasn't. It was an underlying disease, and that's come out in the press as well. So I take a balanced view. I've got half my family work in the NHS, so I'm every reason. It's fantastic. But my question is, were the supervisors and the people in charge pushing them into one thing only, whereby other people died because their operation was postponed? I think in months to come, that will have to be addressed, Keith. That's my view. And I was the unlucky one. I had my cancer operation postponed for 5 months. Anything could have happened. But, after all, cancer can kill as much as coronavirus can kill, as much as smallpox can kill. So I'm not apportioning blame. I'm just, from where I sit, that's how I saw it, that it was all, one person I know called it a PR stunt initially. Let's crowd. You had the situation of, was it Nightingale Hospital was empty, and yet Royal Sussex was totally overwhelmed. So, and I don't blame that. It's rather like marshalling troops, isn't it? Trying to get the army to the right part of the battle. So again, I'm just raising that as to be thought-provoking, because it's been handled brilliantly, but we've got some hell of a lessons to learn after this.
Well, indeed, I think you're absolutely right. I wonder, Paul, you mentioned the war. And when it was time for war, Churchill gave a rallying cry and said, look, you're going to have to dig in. Times are going to get tough, but we can't afford to appease this man. We've got to, we've got to dig in and really be strong. And Boris did a similar call to arms here, and everybody rushed off to the beach. I mean, are they really reacting to signs of the times, the type of people that we are now?
Yeah, it's very well. We've become more sedentary, haven't we, Keith? You think of the Second World War. I mean, I remember my mother with the mangle and the rag and bone men. It seemed everybody was active in those days. I do think I'm not going to knock the likes of Bill Gates and the others, but technology has rather taken something vital away from us. Our children are certainly spending more time indoors. Man is not naturally an indoors creature. He's a hunter-gatherer during the day and catches a bit of sleep after he's had his fine wine in the evening. That's how life works. But technology has created a life which, as H.G. Wells in The Time Machine said, turns us into lazy people. And The Time Machine is probably one of the most famous books written on this subject, where the workers kill the wealthy people because the wealthy people are adding nothing to the economy. So it's back to the cavemen days. Basically, we're all cavemen. We're hunter-gatherers. And once you build, as Desmond Morris, the great zoologist, said, you've got to remember, we are like apes. We are like animals. Don't make any special provisions for us. So it's exactly, take the phone calls you and I have had, Keith, to our friends. All my friends, I've had about 10 in the last 3 or 4 days, have said, I can't wait, Paul, till I'm sitting down in a pub with a fine glass of wine in me, talking to John, catching up with Jill, etc. We are social creatures, and we've faced a year of something that we haven't faced before. So, of course, it's tough. But, hey, let's learn the lessons of it. Everything in life should teach you a lesson. So I'm optimistic, Keith. I'm optimistic about the economy. I think we'll get back, but a different world. People, some curmudgeons, as you call it, will say, well, it's not like the old days. But let's take the best from what we've had, which worked, and embrace the new world, which we have a chance of creating. But let's not just put our head in the sand and say, oh, we're over that. Let's go and let's have a small spending spree, but let's just go mad. There are consequences for that. So I think we'll rebuild okay, but initially it'll be a strange new world. There we are, brave new world, strange new world.
Well, I have to say I am very, very sad indeed that the world has regressed to where in the 17th and 18th centuries, people ate oysters out of a barrel because they were so cheap. and that we have gone forward as a society to the point where now one oyster will cost you £1.50 in a certain place. Now, if that's advancement, I don't want any part of it. Do not take away my oysters. Paul, we'll be back in a minute.
Okay.
When you've missed the train, don't despair. Have a nice cup of coffee. And perhaps a mince pie. At the Runaway on Lewes Station. After that, why worry about the next train? The Runaway on Lewes Station. Relaxation beyond compare.
Well, there we are. Before we go back to the two ugly ducklings here, I mean, I keep on trying to persuade myself. I watched in the heat of the night the other night, and that reminded me of Sidney Poitier in Guess Who's Coming to Dinner with Spencer Tracy. And I keep on looking at his craggy face, and I keep on thinking, I wonder if my face is getting craggy like that. Because when it's in between, it's bloody ugly. But hopefully, it'll get some character as it goes along. But let's just remind ourselves that we've got a character around who will be seen regularly on your screens.
Hi, I'm Jane at Mirador Television, and I love to recycle, upcycle, renovate, decorate, paint, and if I can find any old junk, I'm happy to turn it into something else. So in the next few months, I'm going to give you some ideas and show you what I'm up to at home, from turning tins into bins, making garden cushions, and my recent find was a Lloyd Loom ottoman, which has a wonky leg, but I'm going to try and renovate the leg and find some lovely fabrics. So lots going on. This week, I'm just going to show you a couple of old cop bumpers that I found hanging around the house from some time ago, and I thought, well, I don't want to waste the foam. I'll turn them into some seat cushions for the garden bench.
Well, there we are, dear old Jane. I say dear old Jane, she's not just a young sprite. That's the trouble with our terminology from the past, you know. At one time, when you said dear old, it didn't mean old, it meant it was a term of affection. Nowadays, they look at you and think, you know, who's this old man who's calling me old? Anyway, Paul, here we are back after a little bit of information there. And one of the things that I would ask you is, because you've paid particular attention to the vaccines, and as I understand it, there are 3 floating around at the moment. Yes, they were rushed through trials to make sure they were safe. That's fine. I actually accept that. But how long will it be before we can totally and truly look at their effectiveness?
Okay, well, follow-up vaccines should always be fairly quick, Keith, which they've recognised. But initially, it started. I forget whether it was Boris or the BMA about the three weeks. 3 weeks would have been tough logistically, but would have been fantastic, because in that 3 weeks, nothing much can really happen. My only fear is, and I think it's, if I'm right, Pfizer and AstraZeneca have both agreed that 6 weeks is okay. But of course, we've gone to 12 weeks, haven't we? 12 weeks roughly. I got my note through. Well, I'm no expert, but we've had change of strains relatively regularly in the last year. And my only question is there not yes, this vaccine has been assured by everybody it's great, 85% the first one, 15% in 12 weeks' time. But my worry is, and I'm not an expert, but I spoke to my doctor cousin who kind of agrees in a way, surely there's a chance that a strain might upset the equilibrium. A strain coming in might be something that we can't handle, and it would therefore, would it nullify the first vaccine? Maybe not. But would it nullify the second vaccine? Maybe. So I just postulate that. I'm not expert enough, but I raised it with some medical people I know. They said, well, that's interesting, but they're pretty. I saw a program last night, Keith. This is the best thing. It was a Zoom with a number of doctors, and one of the doctors raised that with one of the top BMA people. And the BMA guy, I believe, said, look, I understand that the problem like that, anything can happen, but we're pretty sure that the first vaccine has been 100% successful. We don't see anything happening, any major consequence in the next few weeks, but we're into the unknown, Keith. It's not often we get a vaccine of a virus that's mutating. So again, just as a layman, I'm asking the simple questions. Is there a danger 12 weeks? 3 weeks would have been a lot more preferable. Over to you.
I'm such a neophyte with all this. I spent more time fighting the NHS than I have paying attention to, even for my own problems, which I treat as minuscule, as you know. You were saying, full marks to the NHS. I always actually break down, in my mind, NHS, the bureaucracy, NHS, the practitioners. Yes. Practitioners, absolutely superb. Bureaucracy really needs sorting out, just the same as a lot of the country's bureaucracy needs sorting out. So I, very much see things in a slightly different way. But as far as the vaccines are concerned, is whoever it was that organised and swept into action to get us all, so you actually are not going to wait for more than, you got your 12-week thing. Is that what you said?
Yeah. In the letter I got just recently, and everybody else got it, it suggests it could be quicker. So they've probably quite rightly covered their position, which is understandable. It might be 10, it might be 6. I'm pretty sure the pharmaceutical companies recommended 42 days, which is 6 weeks. That's better, I think. But who knows? It might be in 4 weeks. I guess it's new territory for them, a second vaccine.
Well, they've certainly got a momentum going, and sometimes you can carry that momentum, and it gets you far further ahead than you think. I mean, if anything, I suppose you and I both enjoy watching rugby, and if a team gets momentum, which you can't actually quite put your finger on, but if it's there, if it's going for them, everything seems to go right. And if it's not, everything seems to go wrong. And for the vaccinations, I must say that everything seems to be going right. And if that momentum carries through, perhaps it will be much faster.
That's right.
Keep our fingers crossed.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that, Keith. It's no, I think it's remarkable how everybody the NHS is just a superb organisation. But I think you're right. There's more wasted money in the NHS hierarchy. You're right. That's right. I meant to add that. Of course, I'm not blaming the government totally, but they obviously oversee the NHS. But yeah, I think the NHS top knobs seem to be paid an enormous amount of money. I think the one that left, I won't mention his name, but you know the guy, Royal Sussex Hospital. I think he was on 450,000 a year, and I think he was basically probably don't be libelled here, but I think he was fired, or chose to leave. But that's staggering. I mean, you and I have worked in the city, Keith. I find some of those salaries appalling. But and yes, so it's a similar thing really. The hierarchy in the city, it's very much a city executive pay is transferred to hospital. My niece, she's been qualified as a nurse for about 9-10 years. She's earning £16,500 a year, and she's only got an upgrade because she's now moved over to become a doctor. So the pay's gone up, but it's pathetic. And yet you cannot meet kinder. As you know, I was in 4 hospitals last year, and everybody I met couldn't be sweeter. Would you like another? In fact, I've had so much tea and buns in it, etc. I need to go back to hospital.
I have to start calling you the tea and bun man.
Exactly. But Keith, you're absolutely right. They're fantastic, and we should reward them.
I agree with you, and I wonder whether, because there are some doubts now, for instance, the crowds are going to go surging back to the stadia for professional sport in quite the way that they used to. And of course, that means that the prices will drop. I'm interested that, for instance, I've always thought that the rugby union gets it wrong. Will Carling, the old farts, is they don't seem to improve, are going to take international rugby off public television. Where do they think that things are going to come from? Yes, there'll be people that will subscribe, and people will pay for odd channels and so on and so forth. But generally speaking, all the indications are that those days are going to disappear. And if they disappear, who's going to pay the high salaries? Because it's television that pays them at the moment. But I mean, you and I are in television, right? We're sitting in the studio. We may be small fry compared to the big boys who set a lot of policy and so on. But as we well know, television isn't what it was. You don't go and dangle a television set in front of somebody and they all sit down and have a cup of tea and watch. It's hard work. I just don't. I think that these very high-priced people are living in a bubble, and it's going to burst, and then God only knows what will happen. Anyway, I'd like to ask you something else, if I may, to take you on a different tack. But first of all, we'll just remind people that who we are again, and then we'll come back and chat, if that's okay with you, Paul.
Perfect.
When you've missed the train, don't despair. Have a nice cup of coffee. And perhaps a mince pie. At the Runaway on Lewes Station. After that, why worry about the next train? The Runaway on Lewes Station. Relaxation beyond compare.
Well, here we are back again after letting people know about some of those services. I just, well, a couple of things, Paul. First of all, it's going to be 9 degrees and moderate showers, light showers, and a moderate breeze throughout today, which is a bit of an improvement. I went out filming the bottle bank extravaganza on Sunday, where a lot of people from various clubs dressed up and so on to encourage people to support the not the bottle bank, the food bank. And by the time I'd been out there an hour, my fingers were ready to drop off. It was cold in the extreme, but much nicer today. The other thing is that, I just said why newspapers don't make it easier to look at them. I tried very quickly because I'd had the Express up to see what the Sun is saying. And to get into it is I had to go over 10 different obstacles. I wanted to do it in a hurry. I need my news in a hurry. The news, nobody's told the modern editor what news is, particularly when it comes to stuff online. However, one of the things is that we always claim Meghan and Harry, because they are still the Duke of Sussex, that he's set to lose his royal patronage, because apparently what they've done now is they've gone on Oprah Winfrey. Oh, dear, 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 dear. There's nothing like upsetting the folks at home if you actually go on an American talk show. Because much as they may be entertaining, they are very illiberal and anything goes. And if Meghan particularly didn't know that, with all her years in Hollywood, then she should have, and very incautious. Or perhaps they did it deliberately. Perhaps they are still trying to get up the left nostril of the royal family. But if they do, they've met a monster who will smack them down. Anyway, what I wanted to talk to you about, Paul, is it's very easy for people to dismiss just in casual chat. The economy. Or I'm always hearing about the economy, but if you don't hear about the economy, is we're in trouble. And one of the things that has been a great supporter of the British economy is the city, is the financial services. And I see that Amsterdam took over a certain amount of trading in one sector the other day from London for the first time. Now, is that ominous? And could you explain for people who don't understand markets what that's all about?
Yes, this must be in line with do you know that the stock exchange or the authorities in the city have taken on the government rather, have taken on Citibank as their main bank for HMRC for tax. So that's probably what's happening, Keith, is this mobility and transferability, etc. It won't change things that much. I think that we have to move with Holland and American, except that RBS might well be advising the Greek government, or financing the Greek government on something. The danger is that the obviously we can't finance things that would be to our jeopardy. But the Citibank thing, which I was told about a week ago. So you've got an American bank, the biggest American bank, actually working with the UK government to take over looking after HMRC. Yeah, that's a huge step for Britain. Yes, Maggie sold electricity to EDF, etc. That was the family jewels. But yeah, I think London, as I've said to you, I believe London will be the centre of the financial world and the markets for many a year yet. But it has to move with the times, Keith. We all love you were in the city for many years, so was I. You have to remember that you have to move on without undermining the values and the efficiency. Maybe the other countries are caught up because there's now a worldwide computer. You can move 10 billion in about 5 seconds, for example, which was done by Mr. Escobar, as we know from the Colombian baron. So yeah, there's going to be that. I still think let's go back a bit so the public understand this. About 20 years ago, there was a big push that Frankfurt was going to be the seat of the EU. The central bank would be not Britain, not it would be Frankfurt or Paris. The Americans like it. At the end of the day, everybody recognises that London ticks all the boxes for being the major financial centre, which it is. And you will go to the city now and maybe see 8 people walking around. And one of my friends who's not in finance, in fact, is an opera singer, said to me, what's happened, Paul? I said, it's going on. Don't worry. It is going on. The city's empty now. The fear that I've got is it won't be the old city that you and I recognise, Keith. I'm sounding like an old chap here. But London, London is the centre. It's got everything going for it. And it's got to keep its act together. But yeah, it's recognised. I've worked for Dutch banks, Japanese banks. I've worked for not American banks, but I worked for Deutsche in my career. And London is the centre. But we mustn't rest on our laurels. And it's interesting that there are these developments where I can imagine, for example, years to come, the Chinese might ask RBS to look at their financing of one of their states. So we're in a world that's the trouble you've got, Keith, is what's at risk is security. That's the thing that worries me. The FCA have been a bit of a toothless tiger. The SEC, which I like, arrest people like Jeffrey what's his name? Is it Jeffrey Bernard? Is it? Yeah. So what we've got to do, it's not so much sure, we want to make money, but it's the security angle which is the worry, because what the technology boffins have done is to create this instant transfer. So the monitors have to keep up with them. But as we know, and as I know from the police, the gangsters often are ahead of the police, and the police will catch up a bit. The gangsters go ahead. So that's what it's about. But in Amsterdam, which company did you say has gone to Amsterdam? Have they actually transferred over there?
It was a part of the trading sector. I can't remember which trading area it was. But there was some suggestion that London was losing out on it.
Yeah. So in other words, I worked for ING Bank, Bank, the Dutch. I worked with them. So what has happened here is, I guess, London has outsourced it to Amsterdam. Is that right? Or have Amsterdam started the operation from scratch?
Yeah, I think that what they've done is a bit of poaching.
Yeah, I suppose whilst we've left the EU, it's still a free trade area, Keith, at the end of the day. I guess that's okay. If you can, banks used to be sacrosanct, and thank God that shibboleth has gone. I'm glad that's happened. But yeah, there is the danger of if you split up government functions, or what used to be government functions, you're in danger of welcoming a very liberal, risk-taking new company that's taken over. So I'm not worried about. I'm sure Amsterdam do a great job, etc. But if there's, say, French electricity in Britain, and there's British oil in Sudan. Let's go back to, and I'm not trying to be a warmonger here, but in Libya, if you remember, Royal Dutch Shell, Libya was once one of the biggest oil traders. And what did old Gaddafi do? He nationalised it. And Shell lost about, I don't know, 13 billion. He just nationalised it. So the danger with what we call our home-based companies going far afield and losing it is I guess a real risk. But within Europe, I'm sure that I would imagine that there's a British bank that's running the French government book on, I don't know, whatever it is. So that we have to accept that, Keith. But as a banker, as you know, and a policeman, and having done fraud investigations with TSB, it's the security angle that's the worry. And I think the big computer companies should recognise that it's the security. Security is the biggest thing, and I worry that if it went on in a mass scale, that would worry you, because Britain would be tracing where its interests lie. So I'm glad you told me that. I didn't know that, but I know about the Citibank situation. So which is
there are always parallels, aren't there? Yeah.
That's right.
Yep.
So, but let's reassure the public that the city is, 37% of the GDP it produces. Bankers get knocked, but I was working 14 hours a day sometimes, and yes, you get well paid, but it's hard work. And I still think British banks and British bankers are still the best. You look at the Freddie Goodwin situation. Look, it was only 20 people that brought down RBS. They employ about 100,000 people, I think. So I think the public have worry when they see these bank scandals. It's not the bank itself. It's one of the either a director or somebody who actually has got to the top and did what Fred Goodwin did. Yeah. So you can't. That's difficult to stop sometimes, Keith.
It's 23 minutes past 8. We don't have that much left, but I would like you to spend 30 seconds or so, Paul, because the police share of the council tax across Sussex is going up by, let's see, 7.5%, which represents 15 quid per council taxpayer. You would approve of that?
When I was a policeman, I'd have approved of it because the police were underpaid, understaffed, and underfunded. I'm sorry. My view on the modern police, and it's not their fault. They are recruiting 20,000, but the training's not like it used to be. I do sound old now. I think that £15 is high. I don't think the public are getting full value for that. And I come back, you give me a chance here. I don't care what anyone says, I'll argue. There should be policemen on the beat, because as ex-policeman, in a car, you don't see what's going on. In a car, you don't pop in to get to know the landlord. I tested a police guy I know the other day on what he knew about Brighton pubs, what he knew about. He had no clue. He said, we don't normally go in there. When I was a policeman and CID, we got our information from the landlord. You'd get the landlord phoning the police up saying, and I'm sorry, we had as many. The police are underfunded in some ways, and there needs to be more police. I agree with that, but put them in positions where the public can understand them, see them, and recognise that they're doing a job. Otherwise, it's I hate to say it, and I'd argue with any chief constable, it's not in a good shape, the British police force, and I would argue till the cows come home. and I believe it needs to have to be looked at, funded sufficiently, because the question the public have got every right to, as with the council, is what are they spending their money on? All I know is some farcical arrests have taken place in Brighton. I've been actually witnessing, as an ex-policeman, a complete debacle of a thing. What are you paying your money for? And these are people who have about 2 or 3 weeks training. So I had 18 weeks training. So again, I love the fit. The police was my first major job, so I love it, and I great people. But they're either being shortchanged, or they're wasting the funding. Yeah. And I'm sure I would surmise there's a lot of funds being what should we say? Yeah, not used for the purpose that they should have been used, Keith. I'll put it that way. But
Paul, you and I will be amongst our little team, along with Steve and Kathleen and one or two more, keeping an eye on the local government. It is now 26 minutes past. We've had a good morning range of topics. Let's just quickly squeeze in our mate, shall we?
Peeps, we're back in Hailsham after 3 weeks. I've had a few issues going on with health and various other stuff, but back to full strength again now. Gardens are looking good. As you can see, the rain is here to help things grow. So our little perennial garden in Hailsham that we've been working on for the last few months is now really coming together. We've got enormous hollyhocks growing. The alliums are all out, cicerantiums. It's an absolute blast of life now, and we're still not in the main growing season. So another few weeks, it will really come to life. So as you can remember, we planted courgettes and peas and sugar snaps in the outside bed. So the courgettes are now flowering, and the sugar snaps and the peas are doing remarkably well.
Ah, right. Oh, Paul's disappeared and I was yawning. Very good. What I think we'll do now is just take a look at the headlines before we go. And they are mixed this morning. They are mixed because yesterday Boris was saying, I'm going to ditch the stay-at-home message. I want you all out on the streets and enjoying yourself and so on and so forth. And then this morning it comes back, hang on, I think I may have to impose another lockdown. So where we are, who knows? But let's hope we get back this day. Okay, Paul, it's now 28 minutes, creeping up to 29 minutes. Time for us to go and have that huge breakfast that we always have after this program. Where do you get that nowadays? One quick last 20-second or 30-second wrap-up from you on the things that you found important this morning.
Yeah, the vaccination's key. The lockdown, I think, could be handled better. Boris has got to give a bit of slack to people. Yes, there will be risks in that, but it's new to everybody. So I'm sorry, you've got to let people go out. Otherwise, there's a huge groundswell of people who are either might have mental health or will have bad repercussions from this. So I think show more slack on lockdown.
Thank you, Paul. And Paul will be back with us again on Thursday, and is becoming a regular part of Mirador. In fact, he's helping us in the background. Mirador has been through a bad period, as you could imagine. We're a small business. COVID has not been a good time for us. We got little, well, we have no hope so far. We might just get a little bit in the next little while, thank goodness. But it has been a tough time. And I hope that you will stay with us and that Mirador will be here for many years to come. but we'll try and keep it going until tomorrow, and most certainly until Thursday. We can't wait to have you back, Paul.
Cheerio. Cheers, Keith.
And just before we go, we want to say hello to two people who were watching from various parts of the world this morning and sent in a little comment. So Franny Siebert, a lovely, lovely lady who lives on the west coast of Canada. She says, listening from the west coast of British Columbia, Canada. God bless you, Franny. Lovely to have you with us. And Roxana Carmen Grip, who is a very, very I was going to say tough lady, and I don't want to give her the impression of being tough, but she knows exactly how to get things done. And I met her in Moscow the first time, and she was getting on with work there that others could not. So I'm just great that you're with us this morning, or have been with us. Hope you've enjoyed it. Roxana Carmen Grip and Franny Siebert, the first two heroes of Mirador Television. And we'll hope that they'll come back and join us many, 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 many times.